There are some questions that all parents should ask about school trip transport. For example, did you know that it was the norm for most schools to ask for 3 quotes and then to just use the cheapest, no questions asked? Is that what your school does? Does your school have a transport policy? Does it just choose its school trip transport on cost? Cheaper travel usually means corners have been cut. For example, they may use casual staff rather than employed staff. But employees will be CRB checked and they'll have regular medicals. And they'll also have ongoing training to ensure that they know all the latest information to ensure your child's safety. Schools have a duty to carry out their own research about coach operators and not just use an authority's preferred list of providers. They also have to look at cost, quality and safety. They can't just use the cheapest option. Would you be willing to pay an extra £1 towards your child's travel to make sure that they go with a reputable company? It's the same price as a lottery ticket. You don't want to gamble with their safety. Does your child's school enforce wearing seat belts? Does it have emergency procedures? And if you don't know whether it does your child? All schools should have a transport policy, and that should include a seatbelt policy and enforcement of it. There have been fatal coach crashes where it's clear seatbelts weren't worn. We know this because teachers and pupils have sustained serious injuries, but those injuries haven't included seatbelt injuries. If a seatbelt policy is in place, everyone knows they must wear a seatbelt and they must wear it properly. If a school doesn't have a seatbelt policy, or if it has one and doesn't enforce it, it's failing in its duty of care to pupils and teachers. In the unlikely event of a crash, parents could take legal action, but a court is unlikely to accept a defence that a school took safety seriously if it doesn't have a seatbelt policy. Some schools get teachers and parents to drive rather than a coach company, but they don't always obtain the written evidence to see that these vehicles are roadworthy, and they don't check that the drivers have clean driving licences, which means they could have points for speeding, driving while on a mobile phone, or even drink driving. It's important to understand why it's so dangerous for coach drivers to share rooms on foreign trips. Sharing a room means they may not get the sleep they need. For example, someone else might be snoring and keeping them awake, but tired drivers are dangerous drivers. You may be surprised to know that some drivers are forced to share rooms with drivers from other companies that they've never even met before. And drivers are often given the worst room in a hotel because they aren't seen as paying guests. That means they're often above a noisy kitchen, which means they don't get a proper night's rest. Skiing and activity holidays are a particular problem because the driver is often checked out of the hotel at the same time as the party after breakfast, which means they're left hanging around all day feeling tired before they then have to start their long journey home in the evening. Parents need to be given the option of paying a little bit extra for one more night in the hotel so that their children aren't travelling through the night, but more importantly, their driver has had a good night's sleep in a proper bed, so they're refreshed for the journey. BUSK has learnt that if a child travels on a coach overnight, there's a huge temptation for them to undo their seatbelt, to curl up and get more comfortable in their seat so they can sleep. A BUSK survey of drivers even found that some teachers are lying in aisles in sleeping bags. Blocking an aisle is both illegal and dangerous.